The morning dust hung low over Coppervane Road as Taryn Ashwell loaded the last crate into her delivery wagon. And she had no idea that by noon, a stranger would ask her to fake a love story that would ruin her life or save it. Bundles of dried sage, tinctures of willow bark, and jars of honey salve, all bound for Stone Creek Ranch, the largest cattle operation in 4 territories. She had been making this weekly delivery for 2 years now, ever since her father's injury had forced her to take over the family apothecary. At 24, Taryn had become invisible in the way that working people often did to the wealthy. She moved through back doors, spoke only when addressed, and kept her eyes appropriately lowered. It was safer that way. Cattle barons did not notice remedy girls any more than they noticed the fence posts. The wagon wheels rattled over sun-cracked earth as she guided her old mare, Bess, toward the ranch. Her younger brother, Callum, needed new boots. Her sister, Nettie, had outgrown her only winter coat. And her father's medicine, the kind they could not make themselves, the kind that came by rail from back east, grew more expensive with each passing month. The coins she earned from these deliveries meant the difference between eating and going hungry. Stone Creek Ranch rose before her like something from a legend. A sprawling timber and stone homestead sat on a ridge overlooking miles of open grassland. Corrals stretched outward in neat rows. Cattle dotted the valley below like scattered seeds. It was beautiful and terrible and completely beyond her reach. She guided Bess around to the service entrance and followed a ranch hand through narrow hallways designed to keep people like her hidden from the family's eyes. The main parlor appeared briefly through an open door. Taryn caught a glimpse of polished oak floors and oil paintings of wild mustangs. Heard the distant clinking of glasses and feminine laughter from deeper within the house. She was directed to leave the Remedies in the morning room, a space of burgundy curtains and carved furniture that probably cost more than her entire shop. Taryn arranged the jars and tinctures with practiced hands, taking pride in her work even if no one would ever know it was hers. Footsteps approached. Not the soft shuffle of servants, but the confident click of heeled riding boots on hardwood floors. Taryn froze, her hands still buried in bundles of dried herbs. "That one," a voice declared from the doorway, crisp, commanding, accustomed to absolute authority. "The girl with the remedies. Who is she?" Taryn's heart stuttered. She did not turn around. "Just the apothecary's daughter, ma'am," another voice answered. "The housekeeper, Mrs. Pardell. She delivers weekly. Quite reliable." "Reliable?" The first voice drew closer. "How old is she? 23? 24 perhaps?" Pause. "Turn around, girl." Taryn turned slowly. Before her stood a woman of perhaps 60 years, dressed in dark silk that whispered of immense wealth even here at the edge of the frontier. Silver hair swept upward beneath a wide-brimmed hat pinned with turquoise. But it was her eyes that commanded attention, sharp, calculating, and currently fixed upon Taryn with unnerving intensity. Cordelia Wainwright, matriarch of Stone Creek Ranch and widow of the man who had built it from nothing. "Your hands," Cordelia said abruptly. "Show them to me." Taryn extended her hands, confused and alarmed. They were work-roughened, stained with herb residue beneath the nails. Strong hands. "Good." Cordelia circled her slowly. "And your face passably pretty. Striking bone structure. What is your name?" "Taryn Ashwell, ma'am." "Taryn. Old name. Means thunder." She clasped her hands before her. "Tell me, Taryn Ashwell, is your family in need of money?" The question was shockingly direct. Taryn could only stare. "Don't look scandalized. I have eyes. Your dress has been mended at least 4 times. Those boots should have been replaced a year ago. And unless I'm mistaken, you've been stretching these deliveries because they're one of your few reliable income sources." Cordelia smiled without warmth. "I'm not mocking you. I'm establishing facts. My family circumstances are none of your concern, ma'am. They are about to become very much my concern." Cordelia gestured toward a leather chair. "Sit down. I have a proposition for you that will sound utterly insane. I should return to my wagon. Your father will worry considerably less when you return home with enough money to pay for 3 months of his medicine." Taryn froze. "How do you know about my father's injury?" I make it my business to know everything about everyone who sets foot on my land. Cordelia sat with practiced grace. A quick one, if you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 100 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Please click the subscribe button and share. Now let's continue. Now sit and listen carefully. Against every instinct, Taryn sat. I have a son, Cordelia began. Jessamin Wainwright, 34 years old, wealthiest cattleman west of the Pecos, and possessed of absolutely no interest in taking a wife. He has rebuffed every eligible woman I have presented for the past decade. She paused. But I am more impossible than he is, and I have recently informed every respectable family from here to Santa Fe that he is engaged to be married. Taryn blinked. Congratulations. Don't be obtuse. The engagement is a fiction. I invented it to silence a venomous gossip, a woman named Lenora Whitfield, who suggested my son might never settle down, that his bloodline would die on the vine. The problem is that I now need an actual fiancé to present. She fixed Taryn with a steady gaze. And I believe you would be perfect. You want me, a remedy shop girl, to pretend to be engaged to the biggest rancher in the territory. Precisely. That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. Perhaps, but it is also your family's salvation. Cordelia leaned forward. I am prepared to be exceedingly generous. Enough to pay your father's medical expenses for the next year. Enough to repair your shop and expand your business. Enough to ensure your brother and sister want for nothing. Taryn's heart pounded. And in exchange? 3 months. You live here as my son's fiancé. Attend gatherings at his side. Ride beside him at the cattle auction. Convince every soul in this territory that you are desperately in love. She paused. After that, the engagement ends quietly, and you walk away with more money than you would earn in 10 years. Your son agreed to this? Cordelia's smile turned sharp. My son doesn't know yet. He returns this afternoon from a cattle drive. You haven't told him? I find it's better to present Jessamin with accomplished facts rather than proposals. Taryn stood abruptly. This is madness. I'm a commoner, a shopkeeper's daughter. No one would believe a cattleman of his standing would choose me. That's where you're wrong. You're beautiful in an unusual way, intelligent, and you have something those simpering debutantes from back east lack entirely. She paused. Spine. I watched you refusing to cower, speaking to me as an equal. My son needs someone who will challenge him, not worship him. Your son needs an appropriate wife of his own choosing. I'll give you 1 hour to consider. 1 hour to think about your father's medicine, your brother's worn boots, your sister's threadbare coat. Cordelia moved toward the door. 1 hour to decide whether your pride is worth more than your family's survival. She departed, leaving Taryn wondering how her simple delivery had transformed into the most consequential decision of her life. Taryn did not have an hour. 40 minutes later, a commotion erupted in the main hall. Voices raised in greeting, the heavy thud of riding boots on hardwood, the jingle of spurs, and then Cordelia's voice, carrying with theatrical clarity. Jessamin, darling, you're home early. Come, there's someone you must meet. Your fiancé has been waiting so patiently. Taryn's blood turned to ice. Before she could flee, Cordelia swept into the morning room with a tall figure in her wake. Behind them stood at least 4 ranch hands and 2 visiting women from neighboring families. Wives of landowners. Women who carried gossip like the wind carried dust. An audience. Cordelia had arranged an audience. May I present Miss Taryn Ashwell? Cordelia announced. Jessamin's intended bride. The wedding will be in 3 months, right here at Stone Creek. The man before Taryn was nothing like she had expected. Jessamin Wainwright was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and dust still clinging to his collar from the trail. His features were sharp, weathered, and undeniably handsome, the kind of face the frontier carved out of lesser men. But his eyes, a deep gray like winter slate, held an expression of absolute fury barely contained. Those eyes fixed upon Taryn. Miss Ashwell, he said, his voice dangerously soft. "What an unexpected pleasure. Mr. Wainwright, I apologize. This isn't what you think." "Indeed? Because I think my mother has ambushed me with a fabricated engagement to a woman I have never met." "Jessamin," Cordelia interjected. "You're embarrassing your bride. Simply greet her properly. Everyone is watching." Jessamin stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Taryn could hear. "I don't know what my mother promised you, but I refuse to play this game." "Then denounce me," Taryn whispered back. "Tell everyone it's a lie. I'll leave and never return." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps. "That would destroy your reputation. I'm a remedy shop girl. My reputation will survive small-town gossip." He studied her for a long moment. "You're not what I expected. You expected a fortune hunter." "Yes. Sorry to disappoint. I was delivering tinctures when your mother cornered me. Whatever anger you're feeling, aim it at her." Cordelia appeared at Jessamin's elbow. "Mrs. Harlan and Mrs. Coburn are desperate to offer congratulations. Do bring your fiancé to greet them." Taryn found herself propelled into the hallway, into a circle of curious, sun-lined faces. Among them, she noticed a striking blonde woman watching from the far end of the porch with barely concealed hostility. Lenora Whitfield, she would later learn. The gossip, the scorned woman whose cold smile promised trouble. When the visitors finally departed in their carriages, Cordelia turned to Taryn with satisfaction. "That went splendidly. Now, let us discuss terms." "There are no terms." Jessamin's voice cut through the air. "She's leaving. This ends now." "If she leaves," Cordelia said calmly, "Mrs. Harlan will reach town by sundown. By tomorrow morning, every ranch house and saloon in the territory will know that the great Jessamin Wainwright dismissed his common fiancé in a fit of snobbery. How will that affect your bid for the territorial council?" Jessamin went very still. "You wouldn't." "I would. Unless you both agree to maintain this arrangement for 3 months." Taryn looked between mother and son. "I need to go home. My father will worry." "Of course, dear." Cordelia rang a small bell. "Send a rider to her family. Tell them she'll be delayed. Include payment for the remedies and a generous advance." "I haven't agreed to anything," Taryn protested. "Not yet, but you will, because you're practical, and you understand that sometimes we must make uncomfortable choices for the people we love." Jessamin moved to the window, staring out at the wide expanse of his land. "If we do this, there will be conditions. She takes the guest cabin on the east side, properly chaperoned. Terms in writing." He turned to face his mother. "And you cease all interference." "Agreed." "I haven't agreed," Taryn repeated forcefully. Both Wainwrights turned to look at her. "I came to deliver remedies. I don't know anything about cattle society or pretending to be someone I'm not." "Then learn," Jessamin said bluntly. "You have precisely the same choice I do. Play along, or face consequences neither of us will enjoy." "Fine. 3 months. Payment in thirds. And when this ends, I walk away with no obligation to your family ever again." "Agreed." "Then we have an understanding." Taryn moved toward the door. "I'll return tomorrow at 10. Don't be late." "I'm never late." She paused at the threshold. "But for the record, I think you're both absolutely mad." She left before either could respond, making her way to where Bess waited patiently by the water trough. Only when Stone Creek Ranch had disappeared behind the ridge did Taryn allow herself to breathe. Tomorrow, she would begin pretending to love a man who clearly despised her. God help her. She was actually going to do this. The following morning, Taryn stood before the main house in her only good dress, a faded blue cotton worn soft from too many washes. She was shown to the study where Jessamin waited behind an enormous oak desk, looking every inch the cattle baron. He did not rise when she entered. "Miss Ashwell, you're punctual. I told you I would be." He pushed a document across the desk. "Terms. Read carefully before signing." She scanned the careful handwriting. "Payment schedule. Living arrangements. Expected attendance at social functions, town dances, cattle auctions, church Sundays, and the territorial harvest ball. There's nothing here about what happens if you end this early. I won't. But if you do, his jaw tightened, then you receive full payment regardless. I don't break contracts. And if I end it early, do you intend to? No, but I've learned to prepare for every possibility. People rarely keep their promises. Something shifted in those gray eyes. Recognition, perhaps. He added a clause. Either party may terminate with 1 week's notice. Full payment guaranteed. That satisfies me. He made a notation and initialed it. Now, practical matters. You'll need proper clothes. What you're wearing won't hold up at a cattle auction, let alone a ball. I'm aware my clothes are inadequate. I'm not criticizing. I'm solving a problem. His tone remained professional. The dressmaker from Ridgewater will visit this afternoon. Consider it theatrical costuming. The comparison stung. Is that how you see this? Theater. How else? We're performing for an audience. He stood. Now I'll show you to your cabin. We should discuss how we supposedly met and fell in love. The guest cabin stole Taryn's breath. Whitewashed timber walls. A stone fireplace already crackling with low flames. A window framing the valley below, where cattle moved like dark water through golden grass. A bedroom with a quilted bed and hand-woven blankets that smelled of cedar. This was my grandmother's cabin, Jessamin said from the doorway. It's yours for the duration. It's beautiful. A cattleman's fiancée doesn't haul her own water or saddle her own horse. Learn to inhabit the role completely. Taryn. He blinked. Pardon. If we're engaged, you should use my given name, at least in private. A pause stretched between them, taut as new wire. Taryn, then. And you may call me Jessamin when we're alone. The dance hall blazed with oil lanterns, their glow turning the rough timber walls amber and gold. Fiddle music poured through open windows into the warm night air, mingling with the scent of pine resin and tobacco smoke. Every rancher, shopkeeper, and homesteader within 30 miles had turned out, the women in their best calico, the men scrubbed raw and uncomfortable in starched collars. Taryn felt their eyes the moment she entered on Jessamin's arm. A ripple of whispers followed them like a wake behind a boat. Steady, he murmured, his hand covering hers where it rested on his forearm. They're curious, not hostile. Give them nothing to criticize. Easy for you to say. You've walked into rooms like this your entire life. I was born to responsibility. The performance came later. His grip tightened, not possessively, but reassuringly. A steadying pressure that said, I'm here. You belong in this room as much as anyone. Something in his tone made her believe it. Almost. Through it all, Jessamin remained at her side like a wall between her and the world. When aggressive gossips cornered her with pointed questions about her family, he deflected with smooth authority. When she stumbled over the names of neighboring ranchers, he supplied them seamlessly, weaving her gaps into the conversation so naturally that no one noticed. His presence was steady, warm, surprisingly comforting for a man she was supposed to be pretending with. She noticed Lenora Whitfield watching from across the room, whispering behind a lace fan to a cluster of sharp-eyed companions. Their gazes followed Taryn with undisguised malice, the cold assessment of women deciding exactly where to sink their teeth. You're good at this, Taryn whispered during a brief respite near the punch table. Protecting you? Yes. You're my fiancé. Protecting you is expected. Expected by whom? Most of them would enjoy watching the Remedy girl humiliate herself. I would fault myself. His voice dropped lower, and something in it shifted, became less rehearsed, more real. And you're not just a Remedy girl. I thought we'd established that. Before she could respond, the fiddles struck up a waltz. Jessamin extended his hand. Not a question, a dare. Dance with me. With every eye in the hall upon them, every step carried weight. Taryn focused on Jessamin's face the way he had taught her in the barn, trusting her body to remember the steps while her mind held on to something steadier. Him. You're not breathing, he observed. I'm terrified. You're magnificent. The word escaped as though against his will, and for just a moment, His composure cracked. He looked at her the way a man looks at something he never expected to find. Then the mask returned. But she had seen what was underneath, and she would not forget it. Most women born to this life couldn't manage half as well. Desperation breeds competence. It's more than that. You have natural grace. Things that can't be taught. His hand was warm at her waist. The space between them felt charged, electric, like the air before a summer storm. She could smell leather and sage and something underneath that was just him. When the waltz concluded, they stood facing each other, slightly breathless. The lantern light caught the dust motes drifting in the air between them, turning them to gold. Neither moved. The fiddles started again, but they didn't hear them. "We need to be careful," Jessamin said quietly in the wagon ride home. The dark plains stretched endlessly on either side, and the stars overhead were so thick they looked like spilled flour across black cloth. "Careful of forgetting this isn't real." Her heart gave an odd thump. "I'm not confused." "Good. Neither am I." But his hands on the reins were tight, and his eyes stayed fixed on the road ahead, and his tone carried the careful precision of a man trying very hard to convince himself of something he no longer believed. The weeks after the dance shifted something between them. Not dramatically, not in any single moment she could point to and say that's when it changed. It happened the way dawn crept over the plains. Slow, inevitable, impossible to stop once it started. 3 weeks in, a late frost threatened the herb garden Taryn had planted behind her cabin. A small patch of lavender, chamomile, and yarrow she had started from cuttings brought from home. She woke before dawn to cover the plants with burlap and found Jessamin already there, kneeling in the cold dirt, draping canvas over the rows. He looked up when she appeared, dust on his knees, frost in his breath. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "You built something here. Seemed wrong to let it freeze." He stood, brushing off his hands. "Besides, I noticed you check on these plants every morning before breakfast. Figured they mattered." He had noticed. That small, private ritual she performed at first light when she thought no one was watching. He had noticed. "They matter," she said quietly. "Thank you." He nodded once and walked back toward the house without another word. But something in her chest had unlocked, and she could not lock it again. A week later, she found a book on her cabin table. A collection of botanical illustrations, wildflowers of the Western Territories, with a note tucked inside in his careful handwriting. "Thought you might find uses for some of these. The blue sage on page 43 grows along the North Creek if you want to harvest it." She turned to page 43. He had folded the corner. A small, deliberate kindness from a man who wore his distance like armor. Then came the cattle auction. A sprawling, dusty affair at the Ridgewater stockyards where every rancher, buyer, and speculator in the region descended for 3 sweltering days. Taryn stood at Jessamin's side under the canvas shade, performing her role, smiling, touching his arm at the right moments, laughing at the right times. But during a break between lots, Lenora Whitfield appeared at Taryn's elbow like a rattlesnake sliding from beneath a rock. "Miss Ashwell." Lenora's smile was porcelain thin and twice as brittle. "Or should I say, the future Mrs. Wainwright. How remarkable. I don't believe anyone in the territory had ever heard your name before this engagement. Almost as though you appeared from thin air." Taryn kept her voice steady. "I appeared from my father's apothecary. It's on Coppervein Road. You're welcome to visit anytime you need something for that cough." Lenora's eyes narrowed. "Charming. But I wonder, does Jessamin know how recently you were delivering remedies through the back door of this very ranch? Because I find it curious that a man who refused every woman of quality in the territory suddenly discovered his heart's desire in the help." The word landed like a slap. "The help." "Jessamin discovered a woman who doesn't bore him," Taryn said, meeting Lenora's gaze without flinching. "I imagine that was a refreshing change." Lenora's composure cracked. "Just a flicker, but enough. Enjoy this while it lasts, dear. Fairy tales don't survive out here. The frontier eats pretenders alive." She swept away, skirts stirring dust. Taryn's hands were trembling, but she held her ground until Lenora disappeared into the crowd. When Jessamin returned with 2 cups of water, He took one look at her face. What happened? Nothing I couldn't handle. Taryn. Lenora Whitfield introduced herself. Properly. His jaw tightened. What did she say? Nothing that wasn't partly true. She took the water from his hand, willing her fingers to stop shaking. She called me the help. Something dark passed across his features. A fury so controlled it was more frightening than any outburst. He turned as though to find Lenora in the crowd. Don't. Taryn caught his arm. That's exactly what she wants. A scene. Proof that this arrangement rattles you. He looked down at her hand on his sleeve. Slowly, the tension left his shoulders. You handled it yourself. I did. Of course you did. His voice was rough at the edges. But for the record, you are no one's help. You are the woman standing beside me by choice. And anyone who suggests otherwise answers to me. It was not a declaration of love. It was something quieter and more dangerous. A man drawing a line in the dust and daring the world to cross it. After that, the performance blurred into something else entirely. Taryn noticed it in small moments that accumulated like rain filling a dry creek bed. Jessamin remembering she preferred honey in her coffee without being told. Seeking her opinion on his council speeches, not for show, but because he valued what she thought. Wildflowers placed in a jar by her cabin door every few mornings. No note, no explanation, just there when she woke. She noticed it in herself, the flutter of anticipation at the sound of his boots on the porch. The warmth that spread through her when he laughed, rare and startled, as though happiness kept catching him off guard. The way her eyes found him first in every crowded room, not because she was performing, but because he was the only person she wanted to see. One Sunday after church, they rode out together along the North Creek, supposedly to check a fence line, but really because neither wanted to go back yet. They dismounted near a stand of cottonwoods and sat on the bank, watching the water catch the light. Can I ask you something? Taryn said. You're going to regardless. She almost smiled. Why did you really refuse all those women your mother presented? 10 years is a long time to say no. He was quiet for a while, tossing a pebble into the current. Because they all wanted the ranch. The name, the cattle. Not one of them ever asked me what I thought about anything that mattered. He glanced at her. You asked about my council work on your second day here. You argued with me about water rights over breakfast. You told me my speech on grazing reform was adequate but lacked conviction in the third paragraph. It did lack conviction. I know. I rewrote it that night. He looked at the creek. No one has ever made me want to be better at the things I care about. Until you. The silence between them hummed with everything unspoken. Taryn wanted to reach for his hand. She didn't. We should head back, she said. Before someone notices. Let them notice. But he stood, offering her his hand to rise. She took it. He held on a beat too long. They both pretended not to feel it. 2 months had flown by with surprising swiftness. The rhythm of life at Stone Creek had become as natural as breathing. And the line between performance and truth had worn so thin that Taryn could no longer see it at all. Then one evening, a letter arrived from home. Her father had taken a turn for the worse. His old injury had flared, infection setting in, the doctor cautiously optimistic but not certain. Reading his shaky handwriting, knowing how close she had come to losing him, Taryn found herself crying on the cabin steps, staring out at the darkening valley. That was how Jessamin found her. He took one look at her tear-stained face, and without a word, sat down beside her and pulled her into his arms. She cried against his shoulder while he held her, one hand resting against her hair, murmuring quiet comfort. He didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations, simply held her until the storm passed. Tell me, he said finally. She explained about the letter, about her fear, about the guilt of being here in a fine new dress while her father struggled. You're saving your family, he said quietly. That's nothing to feel guilty about. I'm lying to everyone. We're lying to everyone, he corrected. This was my choice too. Don't carry that burden alone. She pulled back just enough to look at his face. His eyes, Those winter-gray eyes she had once found cold were soft with something she was afraid to name. "Why are you so kind to me?" she whispered. "You didn't have to be." "I know," he said, and for a moment his guard dropped entirely. Just a breath, just a flicker, and she saw the loneliness he carried like an old wound. The man behind the cattle baron, the person no one had ever bothered to look for. Then it was gone, and he was standing, offering his hand to help her up. "Get some rest. I'll ride to town tomorrow and wire your father's doctor directly. Whatever he needs, it's handled." "That's not part of our arrangement." "No," he said, "it isn't." He walked back to the house. She watched him go, and the ache in her chest had nothing to do with her father's letter. The memory of his arms around her, the unexpected gentleness, the loneliness she had glimpsed beneath his composure, haunted her for days. One evening, alone in the study while rain drummed against the windows and lightning flickered over the distant mountains like gods striking matches, Jessamin poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He slid one toward her without asking if she wanted it. She took it without pretending she didn't. For a while, they just sat with the sound of the storm between them. The fire crackled. Thunder rolled long and low across the valley. It was the kind of night that made the rest of the world feel very far away. "You've been quiet lately," he said. "Something wrong? I sometimes forget why I'm really here." The admission escaped before she could stop it, loosened by the whiskey, by the rain, by the dangerous comfort of sitting across from him in firelight. "This cabin feels like home. Your face is the one I look for in every crowd. I actually look forward to breakfast with you. I look forward to arguing with you about grazing policy, and that terrifies me because who looks forward to arguing about grazing policy?" A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Then it faded. "Is that so terrible? It's dangerous, because in 1 week this ends, and none of it will have been real. What if it is real?" The question dropped into silence like a stone into still water. The rain intensified, hammering the roof. Lightning turned the room white for half a second, and in that flash, she saw his face. Unguarded, open, stripped of every defense he had ever built. "Taryn." His voice was quiet and rough and nothing like the voice he used for anyone else. "I know what we agreed, but I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you." He moved closer. "Tell me you feel nothing. Tell me these months have been nothing but performance." She opened her mouth to lie, to protect them both. She couldn't. "I can't tell you that," she whispered. "Then don't." His hand came up to cup her face. "Just let me hold you tonight. Let me pretend this could be simple." She should have refused. Instead, she leaned into his touch. His arms came around her. She rested her head against his chest, hearing his heartbeat, steady and strong as the land he worked. When she finally pulled away, her eyes were damp. "This can't happen, Jessamin. I'm a shopkeeper's daughter. You're the biggest cattleman in the territory. The world won't allow it. The world can go hang. Marrying you would be the first thing I've ever wanted purely for myself. You can't marry me. You deserve someone appropriate." "I don't want appropriate. I want you. You want the woman I've been pretending to be. That's not me. The performance is what you show this territory. What I've seen is you." He searched her face. "You argue with me, challenge my opinions, make me laugh when I least expect it. That's not performance." She backed toward the door. "I need time. When I'm near you, I can't think." "Then don't think. Feel." "I can't afford to feel. Every time I've let myself feel, I've lost something precious." Her voice cracked. "I won't survive losing you, and I would lose you." She fled before he could respond. 3 days later, with only 4 days remaining in their arrangement, disaster struck. Cordelia summoned them both urgently. Jessamin handed Taryn a crumpled copy of the Ridgewater Gazette, folded to reveal a gossip column. The article speculated openly about the cattleman's engagement, about his mysterious fiancée, about rumors she was nothing more than a common tradeswoman hired to play a role. "Someone has been investigating," Cordelia said grimly, "asking questions at the apothecary, tracking your deliveries, talking to neighbors." Who would do this? Taryn asked, though she already knew. Lenora Whitfield, Jessamin said flatly. She wanted my attention last season. I rebuffed her. This is revenge. Then we end the arrangement now, before the scandal worsens. If you leave now, Cordelia said, Lenora wins. Your reputation is destroyed, and Jessamin's judgment is questioned before the Territorial Council. Then what do you suggest? Mother and son exchanged a look. Make it real, Cordelia said. Marry Jessamin, this week. Once you're legally wed, her allegations become irrelevant. Taryn stared. You can't be serious. Think about it. A real marriage protects everyone. Lenora Whitfield becomes a bitter gossip rather than a clever investigator. And what about the rest of our lives? Trapped in a marriage neither of us chose. I chose you. Jessamin's voice cut through her panic. 3 days ago, I told you what I wanted. That hasn't changed. You said that in the heat of the moment. I love you, Taryn Ashwell, not the fiction. You, the stubborn, brave woman who argues about water rights and mixes remedies like she's conducting a symphony. Tears burned her eyes. You can't love me. You've known me for 3 months. Long enough to know that watching you ride away would break me. This is madness. Then let's be mad together. He cupped her face, wiping away a tear with his thumb. Marry me, not because of schemes or threats. Marry me because when I'm with you, I'm the man I've always wanted to be. I'm not your equal. You have yourself. That's everything. Cordelia cleared her throat. I'll leave you two alone, but Lenora's next column publishes in 3 days. She departed, leaving them standing in silence. The rain had stopped. Through the window, the land stretched golden and endless under a clearing sky. You deserve better, Taryn whispered. I deserve you. Stop telling me what I deserve and tell me what you want. She closed her eyes, feeling his breath warm against her face. You, she breathed. I've wanted you for weeks and it's been agony pretending otherwise. Then stop pretending. Say yes. Yes. The word emerged as a sob. God help me, yes. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and real. She clung to him, letting herself feel everything she had suppressed. Love, terror, joy, and something that felt like finally coming home. When they broke apart, Jessamin laughed. A sound of pure, unguarded happiness. We're actually doing this. We're completely mad, and I've never been happier. The wedding took place 3 days later in the small whitewashed chapel at Ridgewater, the kind of building that creaked in the wind and smelled of old pine and candle wax. Intimate and sacred, witnessed only by family and trusted hands from the ranch. Taryn's father had traveled despite his condition, supported by Callum and Nettie. The old man wept openly when she walked down the aisle, not from sadness, but from the fierce, aching pride of a father who had watched his daughter carry burdens no child should have to carry, and who was seeing her, at last, set them down. Jessamin waited at the altar in a dark coat that looked brand new and slightly too stiff across his shoulders. A man more comfortable in leather and dust, standing very still in a place that asked him to be something softer. He looked simultaneously terrified and radiant. You came, he murmured when she reached him. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you might come to your senses. Too late for that. She smiled through tears. I've lost my senses entirely. Fortunately, I found something better. What's that? You, thou spoken. Rings exchanged, simple gold bands, warm from being held too tightly in nervous palms. The preacher pronouncing them man and wife. When Jessamin kissed her, the chapel fell silent except for the wind outside and someone, probably Callum, sniffling loudly in the front row. Something settled into place inside Taryn's chest. A piece she hadn't known was missing. A door she hadn't known was open, finally closing shut. Not to trap her, but to hold her safe. Afterward, he drew her aside beneath the old cottonwood outside the chapel. I have something for you. He pressed a folded document into her hands. Inside was a deed. A building on Coppervein Road, 3 doors from her family's shop. I don't understand. It's yours. A second location for your apothecary, separate from our marriage. Protected by law, regardless of what happens between us. Jessamin, I know why you hesitated to accept me. You feared being dependent on my goodwill. Trapped in a marriage where survival depended on my continued affection. His voice thickened. I never want you to feel that way. Whatever we build together, you'll always have your own foundation. She stared at the deed, then at this impossible man. I love you, she whispered, more than I knew I was capable of loving anyone. Good, because I intend to spend the rest of my life giving you reasons to keep saying that. That night, reality far exceeded any fiction. Jessamin was tender and passionate, making her feel cherished and utterly safe. Lying tangled together afterward in the cabin that was now truly theirs, she traced patterns on his chest. No regrets, he asked. Not one. You? Only that I didn't meet you sooner. 5 years later, the garden behind Stone Creek Ranch overflowed with wildflowers. Taryn's remedies had become famous throughout the territory. The Ashwell apothecary now supplied half the ranches and homesteads from here to the state line. Mama, look! Taryn turned to find her daughter, Sage, racing toward her through the tall grass, dark curls flying. At 4, she possessed her father's gray eyes and her mother's determination. Behind her came Jessamin, carrying their 2-year-old son, Rowan. The boy had a fistful of clover and a grin that could stop a stampede. A butterfly, Mama. Papa says they're special. Painted lady, Jessamin supplied, gently extracting a wildflower from Rowan's grip before he could eat it. Your mother planted the garden that draws them in. Did you plant butterflies, Mama? I planted flowers that butterflies love. When you create something beautiful, wonderful creatures find their way to you. Sage considered this with the gravity only a 4-year-old could muster. Like how Papa found you? Jessamin laughed. Exactly right. I found the most beautiful flower in the whole territory and was smart enough to never let her go. That's romantic. Sage wrinkled her nose. Also gross. Later, alone on the porch as the sun dropped low and turned the valley to copper and gold, Jessamin settled beside her in the rocking chair. I have news. Lenora Whitfield has left the territory, moved back east. Her gossip finally targeted the wrong family. I should feel satisfied, but you don't. I feel nothing. She turned to look at him. She doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is standing right here, covered in herb dust and baby drool. Jessamin laughed. Very romantic. They sat watching their children chase fireflies through the garden as the first stars appeared over the mountains. Do you ever think about how this started? She asked. That morning I came to deliver remedies. Every day, I think about how my mother's scheming led me to the love of my life. How I almost let pride keep me from you. But we didn't miss it. No, he pressed a kiss to her temple. And I will never stop being grateful. Sage returned, holding a slightly battered wildflower. For you, Mama, because you're beautiful like flowers. Taryn took it, tears pricking her eyes. It's perfect. Papa helped me pick it. She wanted to give you the entire hillside, Jessamin admitted. I would have loved that. I know. That's why I love you. Later, as the afternoon light softened to gold and the mountains turned purple against the sky, Taryn reflected on her impossible journey. She had loaded a wagon on a dusty road one ordinary morning, expecting nothing but coins and silence. She had found everything she never knew she was searching for. A place where she belonged not because someone allowed her in, but because she had earned every square inch of it. A family truly hers. A love that grew from the strangest soil and bloomed wilder than anything she could have planted on purpose. What are you thinking? Jessamin asked. About how the most beautiful arrangements come from unexpected combinations. Wildflowers mixed with cultivated blooms. A metaphor for us? A truth about us. She leaned against his shoulder. I came here to deliver remedies and found something I never knew I was searching for. And now I see you more clearly than anything. He gathered her close. This man who had been a stranger, then a contract, then a partner, than the person she could not imagine waking without. And I intend to spend the rest of my life making sure you know how extraordinary you are. She had come to deliver remedies. She had found her home. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this frontier journey. If this story made you laugh, cry, or believe in the magic of unexpected love, please show your support by liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing it with fellow romance lovers. Your engagement keeps our storytelling alive and thriving. Stay tuned. Another emotional tale is waiting for you. Click, listen, and let your heart be swept away once more. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you for being here. Until next time,